Yeah.
Well, let's start with I want to pick up where we left off on the last one then and talk more about your like adventures because we didn't I don't think we
Sure.
got to spend we spent most of the time talking about your time with Recon, which is totally cool. You know, that's what I think a lot of people wanted to hear and stuff like that thorough. I think you gave the most thorough breakdown of like BRC and stuff like that. Um but yeah, you so you and a buddy jumped into an RV and started driving, and
Yeah.
then you just kept going and going and going, and then you hit South America and just kept going. And
Well, just to recap, so I knew I was getting medically separated, but I had 90 days of leave saved up. So I
mm,
had 90 days of terminal leave. I knew I wanted to travel. I didn't really care where. I knew I was going to sell all my stuff, and I just hadn't made a plan, but I knew I wanted to travel. So as I mentioned last time, there's an application. It's called Couchsurfing.com, and what it is, it's an app for people to travel and on the cheap. And what it is, it's like right now I have my own place and I'm hosting people here for free. So travelers can come, they can either reach out to me and request, or they can just post to the whole community, say, hey, I'm coming to your neighborhood or your city. If anyone can host me, that'd be great. So what I did is I started hosting people in my house nonstop for 3 months because I wanted to build up my profile.
mm-hmm,
So whenever I started traveling, people would invite me in because they get leave reviews. So
mm-hmm.
that's what I did. One of my buddies, one guy requested, and I was just approving everyone. I never checked their profiles. I never did any. I didn't care. There's nothing I have that they could steal that would ruin my life. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
So this guy, he says, "Hey, I appreciate you approving me, but did you read my profile?" And I said, "No, I don't read anyone's profiles." He says, "Well, I'm in a wheelchair." I was like, "Okay, well, I don't care as long as you don't. All the bedrooms are upstairs, but I'll carry you upstairs if I have to. I don't care."
Yeah.
So this is my friend Moise. He ended up coming up and visiting to go to a specialist because he has he's a well, it'd be a paraplegic from the waist down in a car accident, and he was going to come up for a month of specialty, uh, physical therapy. Well, he ended up staying with me, and I said, "Why don't you just stay here for longer, and then you could afford to go for longer physical therapy?"
Mm-hmm.
Because he was just going to get an apartment or a hotel or something. I was like, "Man, that's crazy. It's so
Yeah.
expensive."
That's awesome
Well,
of you.
we ended up becoming really good friends, and uh, and then I said, "Hey, man, you want to just travel with me?" And he's like, "How the hell are we going to do that?" I said, "We could just get an RV." So we went around shopping at RVs, and we found the only one that would fit his wheelchair on the side, and it happened to be a 1976 camper. So that's the one we bought.
Dude, Lucy. Right?
Yep,
Yeah.
Lucy.
That's crazy. So you didn't even know him at all. So this is some guy that just
No,
hit you up on the app and then
yep.
I thought it was someone you knew from the military. I didn't even realize that.
Oh,
Oh,
he's
that's crazy.
Brazilian. It was Brazilian. He'd never left, never been to the United States before. He'd never been on a flight before, and he just downloaded the app that night. And I was the very first person that he's ever requested to stay with on the app. And then we ended up living together for over a year and traveling through Mexico and all of Central America.
This is
He
like a
made it.
movie.
Yeah, I know that's what people say, but he made it all the way down to Panama before he ran out of money. Because in Panama, you have to ship your vehicle to South America. There are no roads that go from Panama to Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the Darien Gap. So for me to continue traveling, I had to ship it, and he couldn't afford to contribute. So he ended up flying back to Brazil, and I ended up traveling all the way to his house in the RV, and I lived with him for a month. So it was cool.
Man, that's what a crazy like just random act. You know what I'm saying? Like just the randomness of all that. And it was like, hey, let's just get an RV. Let's just go travel.
I know that was if I didn't care where I was going to go, and I just thought, hey, I've
Didn't you
never been
didn't you
to
start in
Brazil.
the States?
Yeah, we bought it in California in San Diego at my house. We bought the RV. I sold all my stuff, sold my house, and that's where we started traveling. So he had never been to the United States, so we traveled through 5 or 6 states just so he could see more of the United States before we headed south.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah,
What was like the favorite place? So I think not enough people in the United States get out and travel,
they
even
don't.
within the United States, even within their own regions. You know what I'm saying?
I
And
totally
I have
agree.
friends back home that and I good on them. They go on the same vacation every year. They always go to Florida. They always go to Disneyland or Disney World, whatever. And it's like that. That's got to get repetitive. And it's like, dude, at some point, go see the Grand Canyon, go see Yosemite, go to whatever, go to Yellowstone. What was
Sure.
like the spots that you thought were really cool in the United States before we start talking about Mexico and South America?
Well, now really, I travel quite a bit, and especially in the Marine Corps,
Mm-hmm.
you're moving all around. So I've been to a lot of places, but it's kind of like, when you have kids, for instance, you go and do these things that you've done 100 times, but it's so fun because it's their first time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when I have this Brazilian and he's getting used to the U.S. culture, but he just didn't realize how huge the U.S. is
Yeah.
and how our cultures are very different
For
from
sure.
Texas to Louisiana
Mm-hmm.
to. So we went to New Orleans. That was his favorite spot. We went to St. Louis, went to the Anheuser-Busch Brewery, went to the Arches,
Mm-hmm.
Memphis, Nashville. Oh, here's another really cool story. He's a musician. He writes his own music. Well, we have a family friend that lives in Nashville, and he is a producer of amateur music.
Mm-hmm.
So they start playing in his living room, and this guy says, "Man, I really like your music." So he starts playing, recording my buddy Moise's music,
Yeah.
and months later on our trip, the guy hits him up and says, "Hey, I sent out your music. I He added a lot of stuff to it, and here pretty soon, currently today, Moises is supposed to fly back to Nashville and write more music with this guy."
Wow,
So
man. That's
I
awesome.
know it is really awesome.
Man, just
So
one thing after another. Yeah,
yep,
traveling in the U.S. is great. I haven't been to Louisiana. I wanted to go last 2 years ago now, I guess. I did a cross country road trip, and that was one of the spots I wanted to hit, but I kind of ran out of time. Nashville was great. My buddy Mario lives out in Nashville. I hung out with him. Memphis was cool. Got some of the best ribs I've ever had in Memphis,
yeah,
stuff like that. And yeah, that's got to be cool to take somebody and let them experience all these things that you've kind of seen or you've at least heard about because you are
sure,
from the States. And I think I've said it on the podcast before, but I don't think people realize, like you said, the country is so huge. I think people don't realize how much like we're more like Europe than we realize. Instead of like we look at the states and how the entire country should be like cohesive and all the same, and it's just not, that's just not the way it is. All the states are individual. They're so huge and there's so many people that in each one that they all have their own characteristics. And that was one of the awesome benefits of being in the military, is that you get that experience of commingling with people from all over the country with different backgrounds and different, dudes from Texas are hanging out with people from Florida or people from Washington, just all in the same platoon or whatever, going to the clubs together, mix of music, like,
sure.
and you always have the cowboy in the group.
And the thing is, the United States is one of the most diverse countries in the world.
For sure.
So when you're talking about like Brazil, well, Brazil's a huge country, but they're a much smaller population, and they're almost all populated along cities along the coast,
Mm-hmm.
and most people look the same in China or in Japan or even in Germany, for instance. More people look similar than they do different. Or the United States is we are so diverse, it's just crazy to
Mm-hmm.
other people. So my friend Moises, it was just mind blowing to him to see everybody you see as an American, but no one looks the same. And another thing that was kind of mind blowing to him was how uh, wheelchair accessibility is everywhere. We take it for granted, but
Mm-hmm.
you can't even have a restaurant unless a wheelchair can fit in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Well, that is not how it is in Brazil. he can't even leave his house. It's cobblestone roads. The sidewalks aren't even. He can't go to a
Hmm.
restaurant. The bathrooms are, so he had more freedom in his visit with me than he's ever had in his life because he could literally go out and just go do whatever he wanted in his wheelchair. I mean,
Man,
trying, yeah,
that's
it's,
it. People don't understand that, man. It's unless
uh,
you've been in a third world country or something like that. That was something we talked about with the Afghans. When I was an advisor, there was always the talk about how the dudes would get tourniquet training and never use their tourniquets, and they're like, and the reason they come to find out was because they're like, dude, if I'm missing a leg, I'm useless to my family, and there's not what how am I going to live with one leg? And it's not like here in the States where you're like, yeah, dude, you can get around, like wheelchair accessibility, all the things that we do for disabled people, and it just doesn't exist in those other countries. You have to fend for yourself, and you become like these, I don't know, social outcasts for sure, at
sure
a minimum.
they don't have public transportation. One time, Moises and I, we were in Mexico City. I mean, this is a huge metropolis.
Yeah.
Mexico City is a massive, massive, massive city. We get down into the subway or the train station. We're on an elevator, and we go up, and we're like, "Hey, hold the elevator." We squeeze in, and we go down. We take the train, no problem, easy pay. We go, but then we get to this train stop, and we can't get out. We couldn't get out. There
Hmm.
were just stairs exiting, and it's like he was just so embarrassed, and I didn't know what to do. It was like, how is this possible that you're in one of the biggest cities in the world
For sure.
and
Yeah.
someone in a wheelchair can't just come and go as they please? It was just crazy. It was really eye-opening to me how just how brutal it is to be a handicapped person in a third world country. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, that's I can't imagine. I just can't. I couldn't imagine being one here in the United States. Just being disabled at all. Like we take for granted the ability to get up and walk around, run, go up the stairs, down the stairs with ease. And you're talking about having to carry someone up and down the stairs and stuff because it's just not accessible. That's unfortunate. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
Um, so how many do you know, or are you even sure how many miles you traveled total? How long were you
Uh,
gone?
I was gone for 3.5 years, and I traveled to 18 countries. But the funny thing, well, not so funny. A few months into my trip, remember my RV is a 1976 Dodge, so it was carbureted, and the speedometer, the odometer, cruise control all stopped working in our first country, Mexico.
Damn
So,
it.
so I drove the entire trip without cruise control, not knowing my speed and not knowing how many kilometers or miles we went. So to answer your question, no, I don't really know. I can show you real quick. I could just hold up my phone. It gives you kind of an example of the route I took through South America. And you could kind of go from city to city if you wanted to try to map it out. But these, this is,
That's awesome, dude.
yeah. So you can see I know I didn't go on a straight line or a straight route. I was up and down the Andes Mountains like 6 times, um,
I
and
can't. Oh, go
all the way
ahead.
down to the southern tip where the road stops, all the way down in Ushuaia, Argentina. So that was just South America.
What's that like being at the southern point of the continent?
It's well, I've been to Alaska a handful of times, and it's like there. It's you are on the verge of where humanity can't. We are. The wildlife is in control. Like there's
Really?
an area where you are driving many, many, many miles between populated areas, and it is so brutal, especially in the wintertime, that they have these little huts along the side of the road, like every mile or two. And it has wood in there, it has a bunk, it's insulated. So if your car breaks down, you may not see another car for a day Well, if your car breaks down, you're not going to survive. So that's kind of what it's like down, and that's Patagonia. So like my hat, this is a Patagonia brand. Well, Patagonia is the region
Hmm.
down, and it's in Argentina and Chile, and it's crazy. It's really you can't survive there. You know, it's just it's crazy.
Yeah, you have to like know that land to be able to
Yeah,
make it. That's crazy, man.
sure.
It's just such a different world, and it's funny. Like if you would have, if it was even anything that was something you remotely that you would do, you could have been like an amazing social media influencer, taking photos from all over South America, Central America, Mexico, and all that stuff. And you just saw, I mean, you went to all the places everyone's ever probably wanted to go. I know you went out to the Galapagos Islands multiple times, right? And that's like been a dream of mine to go out there.
Well, I'm a scuba dive master, so I would volunteer in dive shops along my trip so I could scuba dive for free.
That's so
Well,
awesome, dude.
I met a guy, and he used to own a scuba dive shop in the Galapagos. So he put me in contact with one of his buddies who still owns a shop, and I volunteered in his shop for over a month, about a month and a half. So I just lived there. I would scuba dive, take visitors out scuba diving every day, every other day, and just live in the Galapagos.
What an amazing like just life experience it had to have been. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
controlled area. Can you explain to people like how go coming and going to the Galapagos is, because that's a very
Okay.
controlled scientific area, correct?
You're absolutely correct. So the Galapagos is very unique. If you look at the western seaboard of South America, you'll notice that from Colombia down to Ecuador, it kind of pushes out, and then if you look at Chile going up to Bolivia and then up to Ecuador, it kind of has an angle where the northern or southern current and the current from Antarctica come down and they hit each other and they push out, and that is how the Galapagos started. And that's why
Hmm.
Charles Darwin found some species there that they nowhere else in the world. Well, it's such a protected area that when you fly in, well, you have to buy a pass to enter the park. It's very controlled. You can't stay over a certain period of time. Um, just to work there, you only workers have to be Galapagonian. So people from Ecuador can't just go work there, and it's to give them their culture to thrive. Well, when you land in there, they'll have dogs that sniff all your stuff. They'll inspect everything to make sure there's no seeds, you're not taking any fruit, because it'll go rampant. And it's so protected. They have fruit there, vegetables, plants, and animals that you can't find anywhere else in the world. And it's truly it's like one of the most amazing places I've ever been. Um, you can see sharks all over the place, sea turtles all over the place, blue whales are out there. And I'm riding my bike to work, and there's a huge tortoise in the middle of the road that weighs 700 pounds, and it's stopping traffic. It's so big. So it's really hard to believe unless you go and see it.
What an amazing time that had to have been, man. How did they have an issue with you coming there and working as a dive, as a dive I don't know what you would
Yeah,
call it, leader or anything like that?
you're you're not supposed to work there, and I was volunteering, but they didn't really like volunteers either. So I kind of just would hang out and help with English translation,
Mm,
um, because a lot of people, a lot of foreigners are not real easy when their Spanish isn't so good. Well, they see a big white guy like me just standing there with a smile, and I'm easily approachable, and I would get them tours, and I get divers to come along, and it was a lot easier.
yeah. I, so I feel like that's like something you have to do is get a diving certification before you go. Right? It's got to be one of the top places in the world to go diving.
It is one of the top places to go diving, and I'll advise you that is not the place you want to get your certificates
Yeah.
because it's very expensive. Generally, a two-tank dive, um, most places will cost $80 to $100 for a two-tank dive.
Hmm.
In the Galapagos, you're talking 200 or more. for a 2-tank dive. So it's just crazy. Now you'll see more than you will anywhere else in the world, probably. I've been diving in Honduras. I've been diving in Costa Rica, but it's just not the Galapagos. So you can do your training out there, but I would go get your basic open water before you go out there. And to be honest, if you want to do the really good dives, having your advanced dive certificate would make it easier, because it is some advanced diving for sure. A lot of current movement. There's some caves and sharks, so you need to know what you're doing.
Yeah. Have you ever done any kind of underwater photography or anything like that?
I haven't. I went cave diving just a couple of weeks ago, and I took just my GoPro. Um, no, I kind of focus on diving, and I just, I take footage with my GoPro, and it turns out all right. But that's just for me, really.
Yeah, you're just enjoying being in the moment, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy, cave diving, man. That's got to be super sketchy.
Well, this one was actually because I live in Kansas right now, and I was trying to go diving, and there was a flooded lead mine that's about 200 miles away. So over Memorial Weekend, I drove out there, and I went diving down in there, and it's crazy, really crazy.
That doesn't seem safe at all, especially in a lead mine. Like, that
Yeah,
can't be good for you. Oh,
it was
well.
it was nuts, and I mean, just black as ink when the lights are turned off.
Yeah. No, actually, I don't know. I can't imagine. I don't think I'd ever, even if I got my diving certification or anything like that, I don't think I'd be going into any caves. I don't know. Whatever. So a lot of people will probably wonder, we always hear all the time about south of the border is violence and dangers and stuff like that. You had some incidents where like you ran into like shady police and stuff like that. But
Sure.
overall, did you feel pretty safe during your travels? Like, what were some of your main concerns, and what were some of the more troublesome areas that you went through?
You're absolutely right. As I was having a conversation about this today, if you haven't heard, over Fourth of July weekend in Chicago, there are over 100 people
It's
shot
crazy.
and like 19 people murdered in Chicago in
Mm-hmm.
the United States. So when people tell me, "Oh my gosh, South America is so dangerous," it is. But you know, we're so compartmentalized about where we live, and the United States is so huge, and Chicago is so far away that it doesn't impact our life. Well, Honduras is the murder capital of the world. It's the femicide capital of the world as well, and El Salvador is ranked number 2. So what I'm saying is there are some really, really dangerous places for sure. I was down, one of the ones that was really kind of eye-opening. I was down in Colombia, and I really wanted to go to Venezuela. I really, really wanted to go. But if you didn't know, the ultra inflation, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
their government was falling apart. And I had a traveler with me at the time because I would pick up travelers and they would live and travel with me. I had 42 of them from all around the world that would live with me in my RV. Well, one of them was Venezuelan, and he told me, he says, "Do not go." He says, "You have more food in your cabinets here in your RV than most people have in their homes. You stand out. It's just these people are trying to survive,
Mm-hmm.
and when people are trying to survive, their niceties and courtesies go out the window, and it's just a problem waiting to happen." And that kind of applies to like the favelas in Brazil. There's a lot of bad places in Bolivia, uh, Colombia. There's really, really poor places. Mexico, along the most dangerous places in the world, you could say, are along the southern border in Mexico. I mean, there, there's the cartels are slaughtering each other, hanging people from
It's crazy.
bridges. Oh yeah, it's crazy.
I
But
live next to the border, and so I get all the border news, because I'm local, and there's so much stuff that happens that just never So many people don't even know what happens at the border. It's crazy. Every day they're finding a stash house with like 50 people jammed into it, 60 people, or a tractor trailer full of people, or dead bodies out in the desert of people trying to cross and stuff. I go out to Otay Mountain and shoot photos, which is right on the border. And literally, as I drive up it, it's up the little truck trail. I'm just passing Border Patrol agents that are going up and down the mountain fucking catching people, because you can see down into Tijuana and stuff from up there. And that's a main crossing point for them. And it's just like, it's so insane. But yeah, the border's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. But to answer your question, yeah, there's some times when the hair on your neck would rise up. But the more traveled you are, the more you know what to look for. Mm-hmm. Like, do what the locals are doing. Many times I would be in the middle of nowhere. I have no idea where I'm at. And I would just ask a local, middle-aged man, hey, excuse me, where's a safe place for me to park and spend the night? Many times they'll invite me to their house. I'd sleep in my camper right in front of their house, or I'll go find the police and ask them where I should stay, and they'll show me. One time, another story about Mexico City, we had just arrived, and the sun was setting. I found this area that looked really nice. And the cops showed up, and they're asking us, they're like, you can't stay here. This is a really dangerous area. And now we're really worried, Yeah. And the cops were really aggressive. And I was like, I didn't want to drive at nighttime. I don't know where to go. I'm a traveler. This is Mexico City. It's dangerous. And he says, okay, I'll tell you what. You just stay here, and I'll be on patrol all night long. I'll tell the other officers, and we'll just patrol by your RV all night long. And they did. They patrolled, cruised right by it. We were safe, and the next morning we left.
Yeah.
So there are people in the majority of the world, well, everybody I've ever met, they're more like us, more like your mom. If I was broken down in front of your house, I bet your dad would be like, hey, let me help you. There, let me feed you. Let me take care of you. It's exactly the same thing. And maybe even more, because Americans are so selfish and so self-centered, because we don't need anybody's help. We have more than we ever need. We're in these other countries, man. People are trying to survive, and it's just a different culture.
Yeah, it's a different reality, man.
For sure.
I'm sure you went to a lot of places where people don't even have internet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and people today, a lot of people couldn't imagine not having their phone for 6 hours. Imagine if you lost your phone for 6 hours, what would be going through your mind? Like, where the fuck is my phone? What's happening out there without me?
Yeah. Well, I mean, these places, I went so long without. I bet I went months without a hot shower. Most places don't even have hot water. You can't drink the water. Taking showers, you're standing in a concrete room with the floor drain and a 55-gallon drum with like a coffee can. You scoop water and dump it on your head, and you also flush the toilet with that water. That's what third world country needs.
Yeah,
that's normal in these places. So, yeah, we are pretty. We have it pretty good.
Do you think your training and your just military lifestyle kind of prepared you better to do something like that than the average person, the average American that's like, hey, I'm going to grab an RV and go travel around,
I
wherever?
think so. I mean, I think I'm a pretty independent person, and I feel like I'm a pretty confident. Like I don't fail at too many things. I kind of just go with the flow. I feel like I just can read people pretty well, and the more traveling I did, the better I got at it. And you just really have to have your head on a swivel. You have to think like a criminal. And yeah, I guess so. And especially the Marine Corps, I'm not a picky eater. I'll eat anything. And when you're in these places that don't have menus, or they do and you can't read them, I don't care. I'll pick anything and I'll eat it. Or I'll look around at the tables and see something that looks edible, and I'll just tell the waitress I want whatever he's eating. And that's how you survive,
Yeah. I never understood when we were like on ship and stuff and we'd go to different countries, the people that would go to like the McDonald's and maybe once if you're there for a few days and you just want to try something normal or try what McDonald's is like in a different country, but I'm all about like the street food,
Sure.
That's like, let's see what the vendors have over here. They're making the shit like they're killing the animals and making them right there. You're not going to get anything like more fresh or anything than that. You know.
Yeah, the best places to eat are where the working people eat, where it's cheap, it tastes great. Stay away from like if if you're in a tourist area, because when you're traveling, you still want to see all the cool stuff,
Yeah.
like when I was in Machu Picchu, or when I was in Christ the Redeemer in Brazil, or if I was in Chichen Itza or wherever. Those are touristy areas, but I am not eating in the restaurants nearby. I'm eating where the workers go,
Yeah.
and
That's the
that's
real
the best
local
way.
food. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're with locals, and that's the real Mexico or Brazil or whatever.
Which of these? I mean, you've been to all these places again, like that people would want to go see that are in like all the travel books and stuff like that. Which one was like actually lived up to the hype the most?
Well, I mean, Chichen Itza kind of, it is what it is. There are way better pyramids, Mayan, Inca, Aztec uh, pyramids to see. Chichen Itza is just one of the most famous, and it's really close to one of the most famous tourist destinations, which is Cancun.
Hmm.
Uh, there's way better, like Palenque. Palenque is my favorite ruins, and but it's way back in the jungle. Um, it's harder to get to. There's a Teotihuacan is a three huge pyramids, and it's just north of Mexico City. Really cool thing to see. Um, but lived up to the hype, I would say. Well, the Galapagos for sure.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, that's
Yeah.
for sure. Um, I going to, you know, there's one in a lot of people haven't heard. It's called Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia. It's a salt flat, and it is one of the most mesmerizing, amazing places I've ever been to. Um, it's just a salt flat, but it's just so incredible. I stayed out there for 2 days in my camper.
Hmm.
Machu Picchu is amazing, totally incredible. Christ the Redeemer is awesome. You can't, I mean, just standing up there, because Rio de Janeiro, uh, it's one of the wonders of the world. The coastline there, it's just absolutely fabulous, beautiful. And when you're standing up there and you have Christ the Redeemer with his arms out, and he's right behind you, and you're looking out, you're like, man, I've seen this guy, I've seen this statue, this monument so many times, and I'm finally here.
Hmm.
And it's amazing, yeah, for
That's
sure.
that's what really pushed me to do the drive across the states that I did was like, dude, there's all these things you read about in history books and you learn about in school or you see a documentary on the History Channel about, and it's like, why not go see it? If I got
Mhm.
time, if you got the ability to do it, like, go make these things like a reality. Like, quit looking at it on YouTube. Like, go actually see it in person. Even if you can't do something like what you did or what I did, like go drive around for an extended period of time, especially 3 years. Go attempt to go see one. One something different, just to take in that natural wonder. It's just
For
like
sure.
make it a reality because it's so much better in person to see these things. For the
Uh,
most part.
the United States has some of the best national parks in the world.
Hmm.
Yellowstone. Uh, I mean, there's just so many. And we have such great access to it.
Yeah,
Um, Especially as veterans, you can go in there for free.
free. Yeah.
So we're very. Uh, a lot of other countries just don't have the money to promote a lot of these places. Um, and a lot of the places like there there's some just amazing, amazing places you could go. Um, but if you don't have Americans, then the huge money, tourist money, isn't there. That's all
Yeah.
there is to it. You could be from Europe, you could be anywhere, but if you don't have American travelers going, you just don't have the
Hmm.
major money.
Interesting.
And it's just that's my that's my observation. Um, we just spend so much money and everywhere we go we tip, and most countries in Europe don't, and most travelers around the world are stingy, where Americans are just have way more than we need, and
We're just having a good
we,
time.
yeah, and when we go on vacation, we don't mind spending it, and everybody loves American tourists because they are so free with their money, you know.
Yeah, yeah, man. I bet, dude. It had to have been really cool to see the pyramids down there and stuff like that, and just kind of walk around them. Can you go in any of them or anything like that?
Yeah, there are some. Uh, well, we're talking like ruins, but when you're in Central America, you're in Mexico, Southern Mexico, Central America. You are going to go by so many ruins that you don't even pull over anymore. Like
Oh,
I've
really?
been to so many of them that you don't. You just look at it. It'll be on a map, and you just drive by and look at it. You know, because you've just been to so many. Once you've been to like Chichen Itza, it's cool, but it's such a tourist trap. You go to Palenque, um, and it is just mind blowing. You can go inside there. Um, yeah, it was just unbelievable. There's some you can go in for sure. Most you can't. And once you get down to South America, they also have indigenous pyramids and indigenous ruins there, but it starts turning into desert, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just a lot different.
Yeah. Now that like COVID is kind of lifting, because this has all happened. Well, you got back like right when COVID was starting to happen, right? Like, wasn't the
I got
timing?
I finally, so I was supposed to get on a expedition ship uh, from Ushuaia, Argentina, and I was supposed to go to Antarctica for a week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
2 days before I was supposed to leave, it got canceled because of COVID. That's when, or coronavirus. That's when things really started kicking off, and nobody knew what was going to happen. And I was stuck there, and this is the most southern populated area in the world. And I was like, man, I don't want to be stuck here for quarantine, you know?
For sure.
So I hurried up and I rushed as fast as I could to cross the border into Chile. And I made it into Chile before they stopped me. And I ended up holding up in this town, this small fishing village. It's called Puerto Natales. And I was stuck there for 6 months in quarantine. I couldn't leave. I was living in my camper by myself. I had three other travelers with me. I had a Brazilian, a girl from Poland, and a girl from Austria living and traveling with me. Well, they flew back, and here I was with my RV stuck in this little fishing town through Patagonia winter, and it was brutal. I made some friends. Um, Everything was cool. It was a great experience. But then I finally got an opportunity to fly home because the airports were closed. And
Yeah.
I took the first flight. I sold my RV, and I just skipped town, and I came back here.
That's crazy, man. Finish it off with quarantine in a small fishing village in South America. What a crazy story. Somebody needs to make a movie, especially with the beginning, how it all started. I mean, what an amazing time. It's definitely like a once in a lifetime thing. You have to something like that you have to like do before life gets in the way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if you were married with kids and all this other stuff, there's no way any of that could have happened.
Well, I've met a few people that were traveling in campers that had a couple kids, but yeah, it would be very difficult
It
for
would be,
sure.
I've heard of people living with their kids and stuff in the campers, and that's cool and all. Maybe in the States, I guess I get it. I know a lot of guys in the Marines have been doing that, like getting RVs and living on base and collecting BAH with their families. But I don't know about traveling through like third world countries and stuff. I don't know. That might be a little too much for a kid. I don't know
Yeah, and it would be so expensive.
for sure.
Yeah, it
For,
would be.
can you talk about any of the interactions that you had where you were like hustled by the police or anything like that, and kind of how that went
Sure.
down and how you got out of it?
Yeah, so, well, there was a few times, well, almost every country, the police, you have to feel them out, and you have to know your position and you
Mm-hmm.
have to know the law as well. There's times that they'll pull you over and they're just trying to do their job. 9 times out of 10, that's what it'll be, or it's just checkpoints. Like For instance, going into parts of Colombia or all over Colombia for sure. There's checkpoints. Every time you go from one state to another, you will go through police checkpoints, and they are checking you for sure. Parts of Mexico. One time I was pulled over in Mexico, uh, and I'm pretty savvy with this. I know what they're going for. And this cop pulls me over, and remember my RV is a 1976.
Yeah.
So here I am pulling up through there. My buddy Moise is in the back, and he speaks really good Spanish. And this cop starts threatening me. He's like, "You don't have a seatbelt on. It's a big fine. You're going to be deported." And all I do is I open my door and show him. In 1976, they only had lap belts. They didn't have the chest strap.
Yeah.
So he's like thinking I didn't have a seatbelt on. I'm like, no, I do. They just don't have it here. And now he's saying that I'm going to be deported and it's against the law because it doesn't matter. You have to have a chest strap. I'm like, what? You're telling me that I am supposed to install a chest strap seatbelt in a vehicle that isn't structurally designed to have it there? Like, it's dumb.
Yeah.
So he says I'm going to be deported. It's going to cost so much money. It started out with like $100 US, to kind of let it go away. And I talked him down to like 100 pesos or something. I mean, over 45 minutes of haggling, he wasn't going to leave without something. And 100 pesos is nothing. So
Yeah.
we both laughed, and I paid it, and I got off. I got arrested and put in jail in Peru, in Lima, Peru.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I was on the back of my RV. I had a motorcycle, a little scooter, and whenever I'd be in these cities, I would just unload the scooter and zip around the cities on my scooter. Yeah. Well, at the time, I had this Mexican girl. She was traveling with me, and we had been just cruising the town, and it was about 11 o'clock at night, and we get pulled over at a checkpoint. Well, they always want you're supposed to have your passport on you whenever you're in a foreign country at all times, but I don't. It's almost a rookie move to do it because people will steal it, you'll lose it, and now you're in a world of trouble. So I never would. I would just carry around a photocopy of my passport, and I never had a problem with it. Well, they start busting my balls about it, and then they start claiming that I was drunk, which I wasn't. And you could tell that they were trying to fish for money, and I didn't have that much money on me, and B, I didn't do anything wrong, so I was resisting. Well, listen to this. So they're like, okay, we're arresting you. And at this point, I was like, okay, well, whatever. There's nothing I can do. They put me in the back seat of the police car. I'm sitting there. The windows are down. There's two cops in the front seat. Now my friend, my Mexican friend, she's trying to talk to these Peruvian police, like trying to get me out and trying to figure out how we can pay them off and everything. Where they weren't having it. They were going to take me, obviously, I guess, to pressure me or whatever. So they go to try to get on my scooter to start it up and take it back to the police station, but they can't figure out how to do it. They can't figure out how to start it. This is not a scooter that they have there. It's very different. So I was like, okay. So I just reach out. I open the door on the outside of the police car by myself. I get out of the squad car, and now there's three police standing around my scooter and my Mexican friend. And they're standing around like, what are we going to do? And I walk up, and I'm in a good mood. I'm laughing, sort of. And I kind of tap him on the shoulder. I was like, get off, So he stands up, and I sit down, and I start the scooter up, like just real quick. Now they're standing there, and they're looking at me, and I was like, get on the back, So they look at each other, and one of the cops gets on the back of my scooter, and we start driving to the police station. So here I am. I'm getting arrested for drunk driving, but I'm driving my scooter with a police officer on the back of my scooter. And yeah, we were laughing. I was honking the horn, and I was just having a good time. It was just so unreal. And we get back to the police station. They're trying to pressure me a little bit, and they throw me in jail. And it was It was a really bad experience, but they
At
let me
least,
out the next morning.
at least the beginning of it was funny, right? What was bad about it? Was it just like,
It was pitch black. It's just like Train Spotting. If you ever seen that movie, it's like the bathroom. I couldn't even see the bathroom because there were no lights. There was uh, just cardboard boxes on the floor. They just put me in there.
oh man,
I mean, it was a
that's like
smell.
legit.
It
Dude,
is legit.
that is somewhere. What were you thinking when you're like, ha, laughing on your way there? Then you get to jail and they put you in that cell where you're like, oh shit.
I was like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? Like this is unreal.
Yeah.
Uh, the smell was so bad. I had I found a chair in there and I scooted it all as close to the cell door as I could, and I just propped my feet up on the door and I just hung out there. I couldn't sleep. The floor was sticky. There was water everywhere. There was a guy drunk, passed out, snoring on the floor. Yeah, it was really bad, man, really bad.
How'd you end up getting out of it?
Well, the night before they took my blood. They forced me to take a blood sample to prove I wasn't drunk, and the next morning they said that I passed it. And they still try to hassle me for some money to release my scooter, but in the end, they let me go. So it's an experience.
That's crazy, dude. You actually, I remember you talking about before, you were in Mexico City and you thought someone was stealing your scooter off the back of your RV, but you were actually in the middle of the earthquake that was happening in Mexico City that happened a few years ago. It was actually a pretty big earthquake, too.
Yeah, it was a massive earthquake. I had just left Mexico City that day. I was a couple hours south. Where was it? I can't remember the name of the city, but I parked in this um, corporate area. There was some stores, a movie theater around, hotels, and Moises, it was my buddy Moises. We picked up a Mexican guy, so his name was Ricardo, and he was traveling with us. So we're just laying in bed. We just laid down, and I sleep in the top part above the cab area, and the scooter's on the back, right? So I was thinking, man, someone's trying to steal the scooter. So I jump down, I open the door, and I'm just in my skivvies, my underwear, and I run out there, and there's nobody behind the camper, and I'm like, what's going on? And I look around, and then I look over in the hotel, and people are piling out the door in the hotel, and I was like, oh man, there must have been an earthquake. Long story short, it was one of the biggest earthquakes Mexico City has ever had. A few days later, we were in another earthquake. It was
Hmm.
in another part of Mexico, so it was pretty crazy time for sure.
Did you see any of the destruction from that earthquake? Like, did you guys go back around that area at all? Did it affect your travels?
No, I didn't go back north to Mexico City, but the second one, we were really in it, and there were collapsed gas stations, buildings were destroyed. They had to clear the road, and we kind of just drove through the aftermath. So, yeah,
Man,
it was
that's
pretty
crazy.
really crazy.
Damn, dude. Um, I can't imagine like just all the things over 3 years, like the things you must have seen. Like what really stands out to you when you think back? Like, what are some of the like biggest memories that pop into your head first?
Well, like I said, I use this Couchsurfing app, so I would request to stay at people's houses
Mm-hmm.
in my RV, and that was the most real connection and the best way to travel because you're living with people for a few days. They're cooking for you, their family. I've had moms kiss me and cry when we were leaving because we just had such a connection.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people, they just never meet travelers,
Mm-hmm.
especially crazy people like a tall white guy with a Brazilian that's in a wheelchair, and whoever else that was with us. Because, like I said, I had 42 travelers travel with me, so it was always somebody different. Um, but one second, I want to grab something and I'll show you an experience I had. It's right here.
Okay.
So here I was in Mexico, and these people hosted us, and we were in this Uh, it was just it's just absolutely, this house was just crazy. Uh, Concrete floors. It was like the toilet, like I said. You scoop water out of the bucket, and they're hosting us, and it's a family. There's just way too many people living in there. But these people were just so gracious, so nice. They were giving us the best cuts of meat that they had. They were giving us, like you could tell they didn't drink Coke all the time, and they opened a fresh bottle for us. I mean, these people are as poor gets.
Mm-hmm.
Now I look around and I see these, uh, I guess I see this art that was laying there, and it was totally out of place because it was beautiful. It's made out of aluminum. Some you would see on a wall or whatever. And I just commented, I'm like, man, that's incredible. Well, what this man does, he goes around and he picks up aluminum cans, trash on the floor, on the ground. He collects as much as he can, and then he uses wood and carves out I'm not sure about smelting or whatever, but he carves out whatever design he wants. He melts down the aluminum, pours it in the cast, and then he sells this aluminum art, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, look, this is the piece of art that I
Oh wow.
saw. I saw this, and this is the exact one that I commented about how beautiful it was. And this man gave this to me as a gift. And it's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
If you saw this hanging on somebody's wall, you'd be like, whoa, that's nice. That's
That's a
Jesus
cool
Christ.
piece.
Yeah. But this man made it from aluminum cans.
Yeah.
He melted it down and he gave it to me. That's his money to
His
feed his family.
livelihood. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the kindness is just amazing. And traveling with so many other people too. Like I had a girl from China, a guy from Slovakia, uh, a couple people from Brazil. I had a girl from Poland, like I mentioned. All these people are experiencing and traveling in this foreign country with me, and it's an experience in itself.
Mm-hmm.
We're cooking together, we're living together, we party together, and so it was like a totally crazy dynamic uh, that you just can't replicate. You just
No.
can't.
It seems like the safest way to really do something like that too. Maintain a group of people. Did you ever have any problems? I mean, over 41 travelers or 42 travelers, whatever it was. Did you ever have any issues with anyone, like, I don't know, stealing or anything crazy? Like, I don't know.
No,
Were they all
that's
great people?
not stealing. No, you're not always going to like everyone.
Yeah,
Uh, Living habits. Some people are just so stingy, and most people that are backpacking are on a tight budget.
for sure.
And to be honest, I wasn't. I wasn't on a tight budget, and so when it's like, hey, we're going to split gas every tank, we take turns. Well, some people, well, you know, I have to get it at the next ATM. And you go to the next ATM and they come up with another excuse. Or the worst are people with dietary restrictions, vegans, vegetarians. It's like, get out of here. Because I'll eat anything. And no one gets special treatment. You're not going to cook your special meal and then we have to cook something different.
Yeah,
I'm not going to drive for 4 or 5 hours that day and then have to cook myself a meal. Like, so I started asking people, hey, do you have any dietary restrictions? And I would be like, sorry,
yeah.
we
Like,
don't play
oh, we're
that way.
full. Yeah,
When
dude.
we go to the when we go to the grocery store, everyone throws in whatever they want, and then we just split it equally, and everyone takes turn cooking, and that's the way it was. So
Man, what an awesome dynamic. That's pretty cool, man. Um, how is that? You said you're a police officer now. How does that life experience translate to what you do and what you see on the streets? Here in the United States all the time as a police officer.
yeah, so I work for a sheriff's office now, um, and one of the things is not only that, but one thing that really I'm also in the hiring process for a few federal agent, special agent, and U.S. Marshal positions. And the interview process, which is, they've always found my trip incredibly uh, interesting. And we're at the beginning, I thought it would scare them away. Like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
what? We don't know this guy. What's he been doing in all these
Seems
countries?
suspicious.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that's how they would take it, but all of them were just floored because they want somebody that understands diversity.
Mm-hmm.
They want, especially in the current climate.
Oh yeah.
And one thing that just drives me nuts is if you ask, like, people think anyone that's brown is a Mexican. And it's like anyone that's speaking Spanish is Mexican. And it is the most ignorant thing. And when you know, like, hey, I don't agree with the border crisis. Like, that is a politically made thing that our government did. It caused it. Now, if I was at the border, I would tell them, no, you're not welcome here unless you do it the proper way. And I live with these people. I
Mm-hmm.
love these people. I've lived in their homes. I understand where they're coming from. I know where they live. I've been there. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Uh, but it
Firsthand.
doesn't,
Yeah.
yeah, I've been there firsthand. I've lived with these people. Um, but it doesn't make it right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, rules are rules, laws are laws. But also, I know what they've gone through, and I have empathy for these people, and I can speak to them, and I can understand. Like, hey, like in the jail cell or in the jail, it's like, hey man, ¿dónde eres? Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Ecuador, or I'm from this. Oh, most people, that would be the end of the conversation. I would be like, well, what city in Ecuador?
Mm-hmm.
What city in El Salvador? Oh, I've been there. Oh, I love pupusa in El Salvador. It's great food. I can totally relate with these people.
Yeah.
Um, and not only that, but man, when you're an American, especially a Marine, former Marine, you really have a hard time opening your mind back up to be understanding and accepting of other people. And the way I travel and the people I live with, I really had to be understanding and patient, because these people have different cultures. They do things differently. And the US doesn't do everything the right way. And you have to have empathy, and yeah.
I don't know.
So
I think the Marines made me more empathetic just because it exposed me to more cultures and different things. Some people, there's assholes that are just assholes. It just is what it is. But I think if you go into the military and you appreciate the different, I don't know, like life experiences that you're getting and you interact with the people around you, you talk to your platoon mates, your squad mates, or whatever, and learn about where they're from and what they do and stuff. I thought that was always a great thing in the military. I think that was one of the. That's why I've always said I think military members are probably some of the best people to run for a political office because they truly understand diversity, not just colors and numbers of who's, we got 25 white dudes and this many. They've been around a diverse group of people from different backgrounds from all over the country, all over the world. There's people in the military,
yeah.
in the Marine Corps I had served with a guy from Jamaica. I remember the first time when I was a mechanic, I was like, hey, what part of Jamaica you from, man? And he's like, right by the beach. I was like, fuck yes. Yeah. That's what I wanted to hear. That's what I wanted to hear. But you meet all these people and stuff like that. I don't know. I think it's great. And I think you going out and continuing on and doing that, I think that's an amazing thing, man. I really wish more Americans and more just people in general would take an opportunity or see the opportunity and seize it. I think the fear of traveling is big in a lot of people. We write it off as like whatever because we did so much of it in the Marine Corps, and we take it for granted. Like someone that's never flown somewhere or has never been somewhere weird, I guess we kind of take it for granted how like that's easy for us to just adapt to or whatever when normal people don't. I don't know, but I think your story is an inspiration for real for people to get out and just go see something, not necessarily travel for 3 years in an RV with a hodgepodge of people from all over the world, but see something in your backyard. I know you're cut at or you wanted to hold it at about an hour. So do you have
That's
any?
okay. Actually, we can go longer if you like.
Oh, okay. I mean, well, I was going to ask if you had any other thoughts about like travel and anything else about that you wanted to relate to, unless you want to talk about your career stuff.
Well, about traveling, people need to realize how Americans are viewed from people from other countries.
Mm-hmm.
We are so self-centered. We are so self-centered is just the word. Everything revolves around the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The United States is just so dominant at so many things, and we just take it for granted. Like we're using Skype, for instance. We all Google, Apple, all the movies, entertainment, musicians, all the most powerful and the biggest money making industries in the world are dominated by the United States. There is no competition, no competition, and the rest of the world idolizes these things. Now we're not the best at everything. There are countries that have higher math scores. There's countries that have a lot of things, but you know, American doctors aren't going to India to learn to be doctors. Indian people are coming to the United States to learn to be doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And that adds to how great we are with our diversity. But it really, because we have everything and everything that we care about, it comes from the United States. Gives us zero. It encourages us uh, very little to expose ourselves with things from other countries, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and the rest of the world knows how powerful the United States is, and they hate it. And when you're traveling, you can spot Americans a mile away generally because they're loud. They expect everything to be like in the United States, like, oh, I don't have hot water in my hotel room, or the hostels, or they're, it's not everything is like the United States. Hey, you traveled to, say, Costa Rica to experience Costa Rica. Well, guess what? They don't have hot water everywhere in Costa Rica, so stop complaining about it. Um, and a lot of the world dislikes Americans because they're so sheltered. They know so little about the rest of the world. I bet I could name off 5 or 6 highly known world leaders, and most Americans would have no idea who they are. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
and it's embarrassing, but it's also, I mean, I understand why it's happening, but it's embarrassing because we are just so self-centered, and we need to open up our views and be concerned about other countries and other cultures. So that's one thing that really sticks out because it is so embarrassing when I see Americans traveling and they're loud and they treat people not so well. And, so that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Basic respect goes a long ways in many cultures, and a lot of times, I don't know. We were in Malaysia in a spot when we went out to do like a preparation for an exercise, and we had to go to these different places, and we had armed guards and stuff, for some of the
Yeah,
stuff, some of the places we had to go to, and then other places we could just walk around and do whatever. But it was, kind of always keep on the lookout. But to me, it reminded me of being like in any major city in the U.S. Like if that's a sketchy looking alley, I'm probably not going to walk down that. You know what I'm saying? Like there's certain things you just gotta common sense will keep you safe there. And then like what you're saying about Americans being like that, I think that's cool that you obviously you sound like you've had a lot of positive experiences with the people you interacted with. So you're like that ambassador of goodwill, like, hey, we're not all assholes, man. Like some of us, we appreciate the culture and kind of the moment and the place and the experiences that we're getting right now.
for sure. Not to mention, when I'm a Marine, and when they learn that, they're just, most people only heard about that in the movies, and they're just floored by it, just absolutely have so many questions. But then when they found out that I like Trump and I'm a conservative, then it was just like, it was really a challenge sometimes. But uh, after you explain things to them and the way things are, they're a lot more understanding. They're like, "Oh, I didn't know that. I only see what I see on the news,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
and all these things." I'm like, "No, man, it's not like that. People are not getting shot on all the streets. The United States is a very safe country. There are some bad areas in some cities, like
Yeah.
Chicago, for instance,
Yeah.
but majority of the country is extremely safe,
Yeah.
and so it blows their minds, you know.
That's the bad part about their only impressions of the US come from media, and like so they're seeing all the extremes or they're watching movies. They probably think there's corruption everywhere. And like if you watch shows like Ozark, you just assume that the local sheriffs are always corrupt and stuff like
Yeah,
that, and that's got to be something that kind of bleeds over and is an unfortunate rub off of our media like getting out, and it's all bullshit that's getting out and that these people are taking in and thinking that's how it is.
yeah, it is crazy, especially when a lot of times they're from third world countries that really do have, you know, police corruption,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
they think they have the United States all figured out. Another thing is, I'll meet people, and they always have to tell me their opinions about our government, our president, our country, and it's like because our country is involved in everything. Like I mentioned, all the movies, so everyone in the world thinks they know what the United States is all about
Yeah.
because that's all they've seen
Hmm.
in Asia and Japan. It's all American movies. The clothing, the fashion is based off America, the United States. All around the United States, you can see people with American flag shirts, or all around the world, you can see people with American clothes. Movies you can watch anywhere in the world. So everyone thinks they know about the United States. And then you'll say, have you ever been there? A lot of times they'll say no. Okay, well, then you don't know anything. Or they'll say, yeah, I've been to Miami and New York. I'm like, whoa, yeah, that's the United States, but that is very extreme examples of the
Yeah,
United States. Majority of the
for sure.
population do not live in places like that.
No.
So it, and another thing is people from, say, like El Salvador, for instance, or Honduras, perfect example. Honduras has 9 million people.
Hmm.
So somebody from Honduras telling me their opinion about the United States, I said, it's like we have states with larger populations than you guys have,
Yeah,
and
for
they're
sure.
bigger than Honduras. You can't compare a small country with 9 million people like Honduras
Yeah.
to the United States, which has 330 million and is one of the largest countries in the world.
Yeah. That's
So,
that's kind of the point I was making earlier in the show about how we're more like Europe. We need to stop pretending like everybody in the United States is like all the same and cohesive and it's all the thing. It's like we're literally separate states with separate kind of just ways of life and stuff like that. It's such a vast and it's such you look at the not just the cultures but like the geography. It forces the country to be different. Like the people living in the mountains in Colorado are
for
definitely living
sure,
different than the people that are in Virginia Beach. You know what I'm saying? Like
for
it's just a
sure.
different lifestyle and that drives a different way of living and stuff like that. So yeah, no, I get that. It's weird that you would tell people that you were in the Marines and stuff. So I've always had this thing where I'm like, man, I wonder what it's like if it's an issue to travel to even some sketchier countries and they find out you're in the military. Like, could that be like a bad, or you were in the military? Like, could that be like a suspicious thing on their end?
No, I didn't have any problems. Now, when I crossed the borders, I never told them what I did. I made up because they ask your occupation.
Hmm.
I would make up whatever because I just didn't want any hassles. And I didn't go telling everyone. But if you're living with me,
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
And but no, it was never a problem. People were just fascinated with that way of life because in most countries I've been to, their military or their police.
Hmm.
And they're so unorganized, broken down cars, their gear is sloppy. A lot of the gear they have is from the United States. Uh, and then, so they have no respect for their law enforcement and they have no idea what military is really like. And I think just me as a person living with me, they realize, okay, if this guy was in the military, it's totally different than I thought, you
Hmm.
know? So, because we got along. So,
During your travels, I know you were working towards your like some of these government jobs and stuff that you've applied for. was there any point where like your travels made you want to do something completely different, like get away from like law enforcement or government work and just do something, just, I don't know, way out there?
Yeah, I crossed my mind to buy property and start a hostel multiple times. And I wanted to do a dive hostel. So you host travelers.
Mm-hmm.
Hostels are huge everywhere else in the world,
Yeah.
not so much in the United States, but because I would take breaks. And if sometimes I would want to go somewhere where I couldn't drive, like up in the Amazon, I left my RV. I flew into Manaus, and then I took a, a boat down the Amazon River, sleeping in a hammock, and I would stay in hostels along the way. So I always loved that idea, and um, I wanted to start a dive shop in my hostel, and uh, and it crossed my mind many times. Property's super cheap there, and I totally could have done it. Um, but I really love my culture, the United States, and maybe I can do that as a retirement.
Yeah. Yeah. Just go back. Do you keep in touch with the people from your travels? Like many of the
Well,
people?
for sure. A lot of people I talk, like I have a German friend. She and I met. We went to this. Well, it was a crazy thing where we met, but we traveled for a few months through Colombia, and she's back in Germany now. We were just chatting earlier today, actually, just
Yeah.
catching up. Moise, I talk to him quite often. The girl from Poland, we chat all the time. Guy from Peru. Yeah, I really, a lot of people, and I could go anywhere and I could stay with them anytime. All the people that live with me in my RV, they're all over the world. I could go fly and
That's
stay at their
awesome.
house. Yeah,
It's almost
so
like having friends from the military all over the country. You can just couch surf
yeah,
and stuff like that.
exactly.
Man, so are you're still hosting people at your house now? Is that still a
I
thing?
am. I'm supposed to actually this weekend. A guy from France is supposed to come and stay here for a few days.
That's so
So
crazy. It's such a weird concept. Like, I don't know that
yeah,
a lot of people would never allow some strangers just to show up and chill at their house for a few days.
yeah, I know. Sometimes I would have a couple of people in my house in California and I wanted to leave for the weekend. And I would be like, hey, I know you guys just got here a couple of days ago, and you're going to be here for 3 or 4 days. Someone else is supposed to show here up here tomorrow for 2 days. You guys mind taking care of them? Because I want to go on a trip. So
That's
I wouldn't even
insane.
be there, and I would have couch surfers hosting my other couch surfers in my house. So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
That's so crazy, man. You're just living life like whatever, man. That's the you know most people you can just assume that they're good people, right?
That's what I do.
Most people are good people, and it's unfortunate that we have this fear of people and stuff like that. But I think like as you travel more, you see most people are just good people. I don't know if I trust people enough to leave them to do something like that. But hey, man, you do you though. But I appreciate you coming back on and talking more about your travels, man. I could sit here for hours and sit. Next time we'll have to get some drinks or something and just kind of bullshit about it because it's such an amazing thing. I thought me just driving across the states and just seeing some of the stuff and having the opportunity to see stuff in the military and go to these different places and I thought that was amazing. But you going out on your own, even just to go do it even further. You just took it to a whole nother level. That's I don't know. People would do that. People that do that nowadays seem like they want to become influencers. They're out there doing it to boost their social media. And that wasn't even. I think I mentioned it to you one time on your travels. Like, dude, are you taking photos? You need to be putting this stuff like online. And you were like, oh yeah, I should probably do something like that. And I'm like, geez, you've been
Well,
doing this for 2 years.
I have a lot of footage and pictures, and so many of my friends have pictures with me. Um, so I could definitely do some. I can't even count how many times people have said that I should write a book. So maybe I will when I can slow down and have time.
Yeah.
Um,
Do,
so yeah,
do you
we'll
still
see.
upload photos to Instagram and stuff like that? Do you want to share an Instagram or anything that people can check some of your stuff out?
Sure. I kind of stopped because I was just posting where I was at the time. But it's my Instagram page was Where's Lucy, And it's a picture of my RV on
And the salt
the
flats.
cover of it. Yeah, so there's one of the salt flats.
Those photos you got out there were amazing. I know you mentioned earlier
Yeah,
that that was an amazing place to be. Like those photos of you in that like really shallow water are
yep,
just amazing pictures.
that's the one. So there's a picture right there, and you
Yeah.
can see. So it's
300
where's
followers,
Lucy?
360 followers, man. You should have way more than that. People should have been what?
Yeah,
3
yeah. I don't.
years. You got all that footage. You need to start uploading it now.
Well, the funny thing was, I never really tried because I was just too busy traveling. But I would have a sign on the back of the camper that had the Instagram page,
Mm,
and people would videotape me driving down the road and contact me and say, "Hey, we saw you,"
that's
and they would
cool.
start. Yeah, it's really cool.
That's super
So
cool. You
I'm
know
not
what?
trying to do a big influencer thing.
Yeah.
Uh, I was just living it. I was just too busy living life, and that's not my interest
Yeah.
really. But
I'd be like trying to leverage my experience and something like that to like find the rich and famous. Be like, hey, look, I'll be your tour guide for all the places you want to go that you can never think about. That's cool,
yeah,
man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I'll put the Instagram page up on the video version of this too, so people can check that out. And yeah, that's it, man. Thanks again, and
cool.
I guess I'll hit you up whenever.
Okay, man. It's nice chatting with you. Take care.
Hey, you too.
All
Bye.
right, bye.
Bye.